Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time for another fun episode of Fanversations. This time we're joined from Kisma22 or Leonie all the way from Germany. We're gonna have a bit of a chat about some ships. Sometimes considered rival ships, but honestly it's not that kind of chat. It's all in good fun, comparing, contrasting, just discussing some Deadpool ships. We're gonna be talking about Cablepool, Spideypool, and just Deadpool comics and releasing of comics and everything in general. It's going to be very interesting. Now, we recorded this pre-Deadpool 2, so don't judge us. Don't judge us. Speaking of, if you've seen that, be sure to leave your opinions down below. As always, follow me on social media to stay up to date on what we're doing, what we're chatting about, and what fun fandom stuff we're going to be talking about next. If you're interested in getting in on one of these fun Fanversations, feel free to email me at Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. But do please remember that patrons do get first dibs. Now, if you're excited to talk about Deadpool and various Deadpool ships, well then, let's get started. I like your Spidey and Deadpool in the background.
Yeah! I thought for the special occasion.
Yes.
for especially two unicorns, I thought
it's appropriate.
Bodies. Yeah, appropriate.
If anybody would have his own unicorns, it would be Deadpool. So
absolutely. For especially this white unicorn has a how do you say that? A Bluetooth speaker in it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the voices are coming out of his butt. I always came prepared with questions. I don't forget anything. Just don't forget anything.
All right. Greetings, shippers. It's Sasha here with.
Hi. Greetings from Germany. I'm Leonie, also known as Kisma22 here on YouTube, but don't expect anything on my YouTube channel. I have just one video from my favorite, from the opening of my favorite childhood movie, and that's it. I'm not a huge social media fan, so don't expect much, but you can add me up on that if you want. There's nothing special, just me.
So you got in touch with me about something very specific. You wanted to talk about Cablepool. So yeah. Why exactly was that? Enlighten the people.
Okay, I'm not quite sure, I must say. I personally am a Spideypool shipper, and it's not very long. I must confess, I'm always late to the party. It doesn't matter if video games, movies. So I'm just for the couple last 2 years a fan of becoming a fan in the Marvel cinematic universe and so on. Yeah, it started with Deadpool, the movie, and I thought, well, I like this. I always knew from your videos and from the comics I brought special editions, or the best comics of Deadpool. So I knew there was a history between him and Deadpool. And from your video, I knew it was probably more than just friendship, and I'm more interested in, well, his Wade's words, sorry, his past with his former relationships and so on and so forth. I'm just curious, what was this all about between these two?
So, like, how did you get into Spideypool then? Like, what drew you to it?
It's a longer story, so and I'm always like to babble when I'm into something, so you maybe have to pull me down a bit. Like I said, it started with the Deadpool movie, and I thought when I saw the trailer, I was totally already into it. But even though I had never any contact with him through comics or everything else, even I wasn't a huge Marvel Cinematic Universe fan at that point. I've seen a movie here and there. I'm just, it's nice, but it wasn't just my cup of tea. And then I thought, when I watched it, I was like, I like this character. I want to know more of him. And I bought a few comics here and there. And I also watched a video on YouTube where someone presented comics And the Joe Kelly Spider-Man Deadpool comic
Yes.
was one of that. I must say, I'm not quite sure how it's in America, but here in Germany, mostly comics are sold in a collection of multiple issues of comics.
Oh yeah,
At
like
one.
trades. Yeah.
Yeah, so it takes forever to come that they come out. It's not all every type of comic. So the most recent series gets every 2 issues, got every month came out, but with so special somethings like even Spider-Man Deadpool, they come only out every 6 months, even a year. So and on this YouTube video where he presented Spider-Man Deadpool, he said it's good for even newcomers, and I was like, I know Spidey from the Tobey Maguire movies. I liked him. I know Deadpool from the movies. It's a good start to. It's a good to start. Just and at first I was not that. Shipping and I is not. I'm totally into it right away. I'm just more so. Interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Okay. I know why there is something, and I watched your video obviously, and. And I watched the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, and watched all kinds of Ryan Reynolds movies because I was just tell me more. And yeah, I was always kind of interested, and I like their dynamic, especially the first 6 issues from Spider-Man Deadpool comic, also Joe Kelly's run. It wasn't only it was not the whole story. It was just the first 6 issues of them. I read. And I was so very into it. And then at the beginning of 27, the kiss between Ryan Reynolds and Andrew Garfield happened.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I ship it. So I'm totally into it.
I'm on board.
Yeah. And then the ship set sail. Since then, I read a comic here and there, and even read Split Second with him and Cable, the newest one, or one of the newest one, and I was like, yeah, I'm curious where he came from, what was his past, and also I seriously don't know absolutely nothing about Cable. That's so weird. I read the first meeting between these two in the 90s, Split Second. But the most I know about him is from the Deadpool video game, and Cable is not very much or a lot of time in this game, and when he's a flying taco. So I love that scene. It was my favorite scene. Cable as a flying taco. So I just thought you are, and then your video from your favorite ships of 2017 happened, and I was like, oh, she's a Cablepool shipper! Yay! I finally have someone to talk to about that. So.
No, like I'm hoping that now that they're gonna put Cable in the Deadpool sequel, he'll get that kind of rebirth in interest in his character, because he kind of dwindled for a while. Because actually I have the Deadpool Cable compendium of when they had their team up comic together in the early 2000s, and like it's one of my favorite team up comics ever, and I think it's fantastic. But even when they resell it now, they actually switch the order of the names. It used to be Cable Deadpool, now it's Deadpool Cable, because Deadpool became way more popular. In fact, that's why their book got canceled, so that Deadpool could have his own solo series, because he was just absolutely taking off and Cable was just kind of stagnating, which I kind of get, because Cable's a bit harder to get into. You know, he's so serious and grumpy and man at a time, and to understand his backstory you have to get into all this time travel, like, oh, his mom's Jean Grey but not really, the clone of Jean Grey from that time she was dead but not dead, and so it's just a whole giant thing that you need to get into. But I really came to their dynamic from that comic, because I had, like, because you know how it is with trades. Like, you have to make a decision. Like, sometimes you're there, and there's a whole row of trades about the same character, and you're like, okay, I gotta make a choice. Which one am I picking? And so I picked Deadpool Cable, because I like crossover team-up comics. I always find them really interesting. Like, Batman Brave and the Bold is one of my favorite like things ever because I just love team ups and crossovers. So I was like, okay, this sounds fun. And I picked it up, and the way they had reworked it from when they first met, like early Deadpool, who was nothing like later Deadpool, and then Cable, they set it up that they have this really close friendship that's like really flirtatious canonically, and Deadpool has these like sexual canonical fantasies about Cable and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is really interesting. And so when I got into comics, it was like late high school, early university, and so a lot of the ships were already sailing. So by that point, Spideypool was already off and running and everything. And I checked into it after, and I was like, okay, but I was like, Spideypool is cool, and I get it, but I just prefer Cablepool because I feel that there's so much more of a rich, interesting history there. And depending on which Spider-Man I'm working with, sometimes he's more mature, sometimes he's less mature. It really varies. I didn't mind the one when it was they'd allowed Spider-Man to be more mature and he was working as a math teacher and he kind of had his life together. And I was like, yeah, finally, he's getting it together. And then one more day happened and they were like, no, he's not getting it together.
Don't get me started. Oh.
It's just, like, we're like, we need to reset Spider-Man entirely. And I was like, you really don't, but... I know, right?
I'm also, this is one of my main problems because I'm also starting to get a bit into Spider-Man because like I said, I only knew him from Tobey Maguire and I wanted to know the real Spider-Man because Tobey Maguire is the Sony Spider-Man. And, oh my god, I thought... even after I watched then The Amazing Spider-Man, I really thought I had a very clear picture of who this guy is. Mm-hmm. And now I started to read a comic here and there, and I'm a bit momentarily on an identity crisis when it comes to Peter Parker, because I don't know who this guy is anymore.
I know, he's everywhere. Like, you really almost need to, like, pick an arc and be like, I'm reading the 90s now, and then just go through. Because if you jump around, it's just like, but I thought he already saw, it's confusing, because he starts going through arcs he already went through, and you're like, I thought we already did this.
Yeah. I have brought a collection, it's basically the same collection of best of comics from Deadpool as from Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. I was like read something about this most things I have read on the internet on Tumblr, and when I heard what they did with the Superior Spider-Man, I probably have confused everything, and I was like, but they already did that thing in this comic from the 60s, so again, I know you have something, and you probably...
Superior Spider-Man, I actually liked it, but the thing is, there's some Deadpool on him moments in that, and people are like, look, the shipping, but I'm like, but it's not him, though, that's Otto Octavius!
That was my main issue. I had the last issue from Deadpool Now, there's this little bit where they're climbing the
wall,
the wall together, and I'm just, that is not him! And I was very glad and surprised because wait, is they very smart? He totally get it. Something is wrong with you, and I was like, yes, Brent knows it already. It's way smarter than everyone else.
So you have a notebook with questions on it. So, what are some of the questions?
First is very simple. How did you came to the Cablepool? You already kind of get to that. But one, it's probably the most difficult or easiest question when it comes to a shipper. Why them?
Why them? I felt like for them, they had a really good marriage of subtext and actual text, as well as plausibility, which I don't need. Like, I can go for something where the characters have never met, or it's just, that it's not going to happen, all kinds of stuff, that's fine. But there was something about their dynamic where I really liked the focus on their relationship, and it really felt to me like the series wanted you to take it that way, especially after they have their falling out because of all the other outside, you know, tie-ins and arcs, and so that had to factor into their book. And they have their falling out, and the book refers to it as a divorce. And they keep referring to it as a divorce. And, like, they'll...
Well, it says in the text.
And it's like they're linked, like they're genetically linked at that point. So Cable can't teleport without bringing Deadpool with him. And so he teleports somewhere and he brings Deadpool, and Deadpool's like, we're divorced, you can't keep doing this, you can't just keep teleporting everywhere with me.
Aww.
I think what I also love about that arc too is that it's very tropey, and it canonically goes through a lot of the silly fanfics that people write, but just in the story. Like the arc where Cable is de-aged and Deadpool has to take care of baby Cable.
I'm really curious to read that. Oh.
And I'm like, this is a thing that's happening right now. in the and then he goes on like a little road trip with Cable as Cable re-ages to be the age that he is. So he goes to the trip with like child Cable, teen Cable, to like back to himself Cable. And for me, I like that Cable's one of the characters that actually likes Deadpool. And I don't mean tolerates or puts up with, or like genuinely likes and worries about and cares about and treats like anybody else. Even though Deadpool is very unstable and has all this stuff going on, Cable still treats him like everybody else. Like a liability, yes, and not trusting him, but Cable's like that with everybody. So it's not really that much of an insult when you think about it. And I like that because I felt that it gave their relationship a stability. Like, I love me reading some Spideypool angst where it's just like, oh no, you know, Wade's cracking up and Peter's there to help him, and you know, all of that stuff. But I just feel that for me, for Cable and Deadpool, they would have more of that stability built in because Cable's got more stability himself as a character, whereas Peter is always going through like, I hurt the people I love, and I can't be trusted, and I shouldn't be Spider-Man anymore, costume in the trash. But, like, you know, Cable's all, I was raised in the future under Apocalypse. I've already dealt with all of this stuff.
I've seen worse.
I've seen all the things. And they, like, so, like, for me, they just have a lot of really interesting arcs. For me, it's not a question of like one is better than the other. It's more a question of I just wish more people knew about Cablepool because Cable and Deadpool, they had their thing so long ago, and there's not really a reason to revisit it unless you're going through comics. You're like, oh, I'm curious about Deadpool, or I want to read some classic stuff, right? So otherwise, especially because Cable's not popular anymore, unless you're reading Split Second or something like that, you're not really going to encounter the two of them together, and they're not going to reference it. It's not a Johnny Storm, Peter Parker thing where they remember that they're friends. Like, they tend not to, especially because right now, I mean, they're phasing them back in, but there was that period where they weren't really dealing with any X-Men stuff or any Fantastic Four stuff, and they were kind of just like, we're just going to focus on the stuff that's doing really well in the MCU, the Disney side of it, and we're not going to worry too much about all of our X-Men's and stuff, and Cyclops is dead, and just like, you know,
get over it.
Get over it.
Oh, I had a question, and now I forgot it. You know, yes, I've also, in preparation for this conversation, I checked the German publisher. We have only one publisher who publishes all Marvel and DC comics. This is so amazing. You have to visit their page, and this is coming out then, and you can just get everything. It's amazing. And I've seen you can still get your hands on the old Cable and Deadpool comics, and except the first one. The first is not available anymore, but they're re-releasing it till, I don't know, in a few months. And I was like, that's so awesome, because I really am very interested in it. And you see the mechanism behind it. Deadpool 2 is coming out, and Cable
we're going to re-release all the things. People will care. We've got to sell it.
We should put the printers on. We need to be prepared. This is so amazing.
Yeah, I noticed that because for us, Marvel does this thing up here where they'll release things in little trades, like, volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they'll release a massive compendium trade of all the things together. But they'll time them so they're always coming one after the other. So when I first got into Cable and Deadpool, I was in that horrible time where they were just canceling all of the individual ones. So I bought volume 1. Then it was discontinued. And then all that was left was the omnibus. So I was like, oh my god. So I had to buy the giant omnibus. And then a few months later, they started re-releasing them in tiny chunks again. I was so angry. Oh. So now I have the giant compendium and volume 1. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this volume? They always do that. So I noticed they pulled the omnibus back off the shelves. And I was like, oh, they're going to re-release it as little chunks because they can get more money that way with the movie coming out. And people will care about Cable again. And people will write more fics in the tiny fic section on AO3, and I'm so excited because I've read all of those fics like 8 times.
Wow.
Some of them are really good, and some of them are incomplete, and I read them anyway. I know they don't end, and I still go read them.
I have a very special, Spideypool fanfiction. It is, at least for a year or... I have at least a year on hold, and I'm still reading it. I printed it even out because I love it. I always read it till the first half, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm totally okay with that. Something I wanted to say about releasing comics in Germany is also we are in a very curious, totally weird middle stage of releasing comics because they are re-releasing also old ones.
Okay.
On the one hand, they came out in Germany, but 2011 was the last thing, I guess. Mm-hmm. And some which didn't came out in Germany. So the issue with Hitmonkey and Spidey.
Oh yeah.
They re-released it, and I was like, this is old. What is this doing here? They released it a few months back, and I was like, what is this doing here? This is all old. Or Deadpool Pulp is a re-release, and I'm standing there. If you're, especially when you're starting right now to get into comics, you're standing in front of this small shelf in Germany, and I'm just like, 5 different Deadpool comics, and I'm just standing, okay, this is new, this is old, this is something in the middle. Okay, just take this. This is actually a thing that happened to me. Took something from the shelf and was like, okay, and they're trying to make it as accessible as it gets. They are in the first page, you see which comics are in it, which issues, with the date when they were released in America, with the English title, with the German title. They are very trying to. This is easy. You can easily get into comics. But and I opened the first page and was like, okay, Deadpool blah 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 part 2 was the first issue. And I was like, okay, first part 1. And I looked at the back of the book. Oh, this is volume 3. So there's issue 2, part 2 in volume 3. Where are the others 2? So weird and frustrating stuff. On the one hand, I'm very happy, but because I can say I have officially every Spideypool interaction that there is out there in comics. But on the other hand, I have no idea where we are. Chronically wise. Okay, canon. What is canon anyway?
And it's hard enough to keep up with everything that keeps changing, and Marvel is relaunching / relaunched its universe again recently, and I'm just like, I don't have time. I'm trying. Yeah. I'm trying, and I don't have time for all of this. And the thing with the relaunches that's the most annoying is you just need to sit there and be like, okay, what's getting retconned now? What were the things that I cared about that no longer exist? Thanks a lot. Like, I'm still not over firstly, I'm not over the stupid New 52 relaunch in DC, which, and then Rebirth, which was better because it fixed a lot of the things, but some of the stuff is still gone forever. And I'm like, I liked those things that were gone forever, and I'm sad now. A lot, because especially because a lot of them were like generational things, which DC has a lot of, and I hate when they just retcon those things away because they don't think people care. Like when they retcon away people's kids and marriages and stuff like that, and I'm like, I care.
Yeah, me too. Especially relationships and kids and oh man. This is one of the main reasons I have an issue with long running. If it's series, comics, or whatnot. But I know in some point in the future they're gone. Especially Peter. There was a panel I saw on Tumblr where he said, and me and MJ, when there was a time we were together, then we were not, then we were married, then we were not, then she was pregnant, then she was not. And for example, Spideypool, I don't want it to be canon. Very honestly, because I know in some point in the future then they're gonna get a divorce or whatnot, and I just want to live in my
like Deadpool's been married a couple times. I mean, and like he's divorced. So, and Peter, whenever they bring on a new romantic interest for him, even if she's really interesting, I'm like, I can't care because you're not gonna be here in like a few months. You're not going to be here. I think that's part of the appeal of the pairings of these side characters in some ways, and that you almost have that permanence of like, you can keep it permanent because these characters are always going to interact. They're always going to be around. They're not going anywhere in the same way that... And the writers also spend more time writing them and paying attention to them, especially if the relationship, like, say, Cable and Deadpool is not quite canonical, so they don't... I find a lot of writers fall into this trap where as soon as the relationship becomes canon, all of a sudden they don't know how to write it anymore. And it's like, what? But like, Peter and Mary Jane are married. What do married people do? I don't know. And then they just stop writing Mary Jane. Like, she just stops existing.
Oh, seriously. It's not that difficult.
I know, like, she would just show up to bring him lunch. I remember that. Like, she would, like, bring him his lunch at work and stuff. And I'm like, Mary Jane has a life, guys. She has a life.
Women in general. Yeah. Don't get into that, please. It's a very dark and...
It's a dark road. It's a dark, long road.
How canon is it? That was a question I asked myself a lot. It is there, but yeah, how canon?
It's like ish. It's ish. I mean, it's canonical that Deadpool likes Cable, but I mean, it's canonical that Deadpool likes a lot of people. So it's like Deadpool likes a lot of people, and he's not shy about saying it. So that part is definitely 100% in. It's the Cable side of it that's not quite, you know, like, how does he feel about it? I mean, he has Domino and all of that stuff going on, so is it really a thing, or is that just the fandom side of it? But then at the same time, they play with all of those aspects of implying that they do have this really deep, at the very least, friendship. So it's one of those things where it feels like if it were a different time, then maybe we would have gone farther than we did. I mean, as for the writer of it, like, he's not really hung up on stuff like that. He's very I've read a few interviews with him, and he's very into the idea of fans interpreting things themselves. He feels that if you give fans the answer, in some ways that's actually limiting. He's like, he likes to leave ideas open so fans can go wherever you want. He's like, as soon as you answer a question, like, about a character's sexuality or who they're really with and stuff, he's like, you close the door on so many other fans who are trying to take it in a different direction. And he's like, I would rather leave that door open, which I get, you know. So
yeah, that's totally fun.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's completely fine. Because for him, he was talking about that specifically, about how he wouldn't define Deadpool's sexuality, like, narrow it down, because like right now we've accepted pretty much that he's pansexual, and that's how that author was writing him as well. But people wanted like an actual, like, direct label, like, you know, like, oh, he's gay or he's straight, and they wanted a direct answer. And so that was what he was responding to, where he was like, I'm not going to give you a direct answer. It's up to you, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah. And I think this is the most fun part about them. You can so interpreted. Sorry,
Yeah.
you know what
I
know what I mean. In so many ways, and you can run with it. This is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can see the appeal, but on the other hand, I just really like to have answers and then maybe stay together at the one point. But it's just me. Can I yeah, probably your favorite comic, which between these two is probably their team up comic series.
It's their team up comic, and it's the arc with de-aged Cable.
Yeah.
Where Sinister tries to kidnap baby Cable so that he can raise him and make him evil. And I'm like, yes, all of the things.
This is like beyond. This is very fanficky, but I like it.
Yeah, like, it's canonical fanfic. It's great. Yeah. That's why I can't get mad at de-aged. Like, the people have been de-aged, and people are like, that's so fanficky. I'm like, that has happened in canon for so long. Don't pretend that is not a canonical thing. Like, who else remembers that Star Trek TNG episode where they get in the transporter accident and they're all kids, and he's trying to command the bridge of the Enterprise as a tiny, snooty British kid. So...
So, and I'm also thinking, which came first, fanfiction or not real thing? Who done it first? I bet there was someone out there before it became a staple in fanfiction. So
I'm totally sure that is a canonical staple, because if there's one thing like sci-fi loves, it's throwing kids into like mainstream leading positions somehow. You know, like society's collapsed and the children are leading. Like, that's a classic sci-fi thing.
Yeah. Then something completely different. Not completely different. But Deadpool 2. I must say,
yes,
I didn't watch any real trailer.
Good for you.
Yeah, okay, good. This was the thing. I was very worried because the trailer, I love the trailer from the first Deadpool, but when I watched it, really, first night when it came in theaters, I watched it and I was like, yeah, that's fun, but I knew this scene, and I knew that scene, and this, and I was like, Deadpool, the movie, I don't love it, but I very much like it, and it had to grow on me. It's the first time I watched it, I was like, sure, it's nice, but I needed to watch it multiple times to get all the jokes, and watched it in German and in English. So the German translation is sometimes so amazing. So because you can't say the F word in all the ways in Germany, and there's amazing translation. So we have basically two movies for one, and I don't want that to happen again with Deadpool 2. I said, okay, teaser, yes, and the thing with Bob Ross, I love that. I watched that, and after that, no trailer for me. No, nothing, because I don't want that to happen again. I'm hyped, and I don't need a trailer.
Well, that's the thing, because I'm with you, I like being surprised. I like not knowing, and I feel that with trailers, we're almost moving back into the 60s style of trailers, because I like to study trailers, and back in the 60s, they'd be like, this is Joe. Joe has a problem. His wife was murdered. And, like, they just run through the entire plot of the movie. And I feel like we're doing that, but without the narration. But we just follow through all of the plot, and you see all of the main twists and all of the things. And the thing that they do now, which drives me insane, is they try and hide it by including scenes in the trailer that aren't in the movie, either intentionally or unintentionally, because they just didn't make it in post or whatever. But that's so irritating to me, because then I'm like, so is this in the deleted scenes? Are you trying to make me buy the DVD? Because I don't want to, but I really want to see this scene. And so... And then, like, especially if it's a twist, you're just waiting for it to happen. And it's like, I can still enjoy a movie that way, but sometimes it's nice to be genuinely surprised and go into something not knowing exactly every single twist and what's going to happen. And to not be trying to work the movie out before you even go see it, which I think is a huge problem with all the teasers and releases. And I think that, I get that they're trying to play into hype culture. And they want the audience to be hyped. And they're afraid that we're going to lose like our attention span's too short. We're gonna forget. We're gonna look at something else, which I think is disingenuous because I think if people are really into it, they'll remember and they'll still be excited. But because of that, you have earlier and earlier and earlier teasers, which is almost creating this backlash of more and more and more fan hate, which is just creating this really negative atmosphere. I was online last night. I was looking at the Starfire costume controversy for the new Teen Titans show. And they were like, Starfire looks awful. Look at this picture. And I was like, okay. So I went to look at the picture. But it's her standing on set outside in like a huge winter coat because she's cold. And they're all like, look at this. And I'm like, you can't even see anything. And they haven't added any effects or CG. And she's cold in the coat. Like, how do you know how it looks? Brie Larson, like, her costume's green, guys. Her costume's green. They never read a Captain Marvel comic. And I'm like, guys, calm down.
It's just a color. Jeez.
And firstly, because I was like, well, it is green, so they could be fixing that in post, because that would be so easy to key out. And if they're not, she had, like, the character himself, when he was a he, had a different costume. So I'm like, there are so many different, like, people need to calm down.
Yeah, just chill, people, please. Just chill.
I'm just trying to enjoy things.
Yeah! We will see. I've heard some... some I've already seen it where there were good reviews and there were bad reviews, and I'm just like, I watch it anyway.
That's the thing, it really depends on how you feel about Deadpool as a character, because if you don't like Deadpool, there is no way you are going to like any of these movies, because they're very accurate to portraying Deadpool in the way that he's meant to be portrayed. It's really obnoxious and fourth wall breaking and in your face. So if you don't like that, then there's not a chance for you with these movies. Just don't go.
Josh Brolin as Cable.
He's not the Cable I would have picked. Like, when we were looking through all the fan castings, that was mine. I was really into the idea of Stephen Lang. I've been a fan of Stephen Lang for a long time, from his early 60s work on Crime Story, where he played a lawyer who literally, like, threw the book at somebody. But... So, I think he's great, and he had more of, like, I don't know, he's had more of the face I was envisioning, like, not quite as beefy as Cable, but that's okay, you can beef up. Josh Brolin, I'm like...
Ryan Reynolds is also not that beefy. Cable, Deadpool in some comics, so...
And it's like, Josh Brolin, like, I'm the kind of person who will wait and see. Because every time somebody casts somebody who anybody has any questions about, people are like, it was the worst casting of all time, they're gonna be terrible. And I'm like, well, I need to see them first, and then I'll decide if they're terrible or not. Like, we'll see. I just kind of like to laugh and think that he got so tired of not being Thanos or doing anything that he was like, fine, I'll be Cable.
Perfect.
They don't need me.
Yeah, I'm just... here looking grim and doing a
in the background. I can do that in my spare time.
Which is also funny for us Germans. Stephen Lang and Josh Brolin, not every time, but often they share the same German voice actor.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And I realized, I hope I'm not wrong, in post-productions they... German voice actors in trailer are not always the same voice actors they are doing in the film. And as far as I have heard out, Josh Brolin has two main voice actors in Germany. One is voicing Thanos, the more blockbuster voice actor, can we say?
Yeah.
And the other, who's not that blockbuster voice actor, is voicing him on Deadpool. This is so amazing. So you have the same actor but two different voices, so we have no problem distinguishing these two.
That's fantastic.
Chaos was awesome. I love that.
I remember when Deadpool first came out and people were imagining that it was going to have this huge ricochet effect and there were going to be all these new R-rated movies. And I was like, guys, there's not. There's not. Like, come on.
We had Logan, and Logan did not that well, as expected at least. And yeah.
Well, Logan was depressing. That's why. I mean, I loved Logan, but it's not a happy movie. It's not like, oh, gee, I'm going to relax with some popcorn and have a good time watching Logan. It's like, no, I'm going to get a bag of tissues and Kleenex and watch Logan.
One thing as well, because of voice actors. I've realized that only a few months back when I watched the Captain America movies. Yeah. Ryan Reynolds and Chris Evans share the same German voice actor. So there is no coming together between Captain America and Deadpool. It's not happening because they have the same German voice actor.
That's great.
You sound like me. Really? There was one thing I really... My best friend is a huge Captain America fan, and I became interested in, like I said in the beginning, I'm not that huge Marvel Cinematic Universe fan. Mm-hmm. I got interested in especially Captain America through a fan fiction because, oh, he's so sweet in this fan fiction. I want to know more about him, and watched the movies from my best friend. I'm sometimes taking notes to tell her what I liked about the most, and I was like, same voice actor as Ryan. It was so awesome. I'm just really going through all the questions. This is awesome. Have you favorite fan fiction? Another question of me, because I realized when it comes to Spideypool, I'm not that huge fan of AUs, because I think the difficulties these two have, or difficulties, what makes the characters so interesting is when they are in and out of their costumes. So I like AUs, don't get me wrong, but not as much as I prefer when they are just
themselves. Yeah. Like for Cablepool specifically, like in general, I'll read anything, but for Cablepool, the pool of fics, pun intended, is so small that there isn't that much variety. So you're not going to get that much in terms of AUs and that kind of fic. So it's mostly extended, like, plots from stuff that already happened in the comics. It's smut, so there's a lot of smut fics. And there's dystopian future stuff, because of course it's Cable. My favorite one is there is a fic on AO3 where it's about something happens to Deadpool and he loses his healing ability. And so he can't heal, which means that his cancer is spreading, and he's still trying to go around and be a hitman and do his stuff. And Cable is trying to help him, but it's like a fic where it's dealing with Deadpool's low self-esteem with himself and how he doesn't really feel that it's worth anybody's time to help him or do anything. So he's still going around living his life, and Cable's like, I'm trying to help you, what are you doing?
So more angsty or more fun, or both?
It's both. Like, it's angst with a happy ending. So, and because the thing with Cablepool too is that oftentimes it's a very doomed romance, because there's this knowledge that Cable can't put Deadpool first. It's just not in his nature. He'll always put the world and the future and saving people first. Yeah. So, like, even at the end of the series, when he kills himself so that Deadpool can live, well, kills himself, he's fine. But
every character who ever died except Uncle Ben.
Exactly. And so there's this aspect of it that it's like they like each other, but it's not going to be a permanent thing. It can't be permanent because of how Cable is. And it's just kind of like this acceptance. And like, I kind of love that tragic aspect of it, that they're just going to have these happy moments, but the world's never gonna be fixed. Especially because when people were writing this, we were leading up to all of the X-Men Messiah stuff, that Cable had to raise Jean, like their future child in the future, and that was like the mutant Messiah who was gonna come back post House of M and repopulate the world with mutants and just all kinds of stuff.
Too much information.
Too much. Because there was that time where Marvel decided there were too many mutants, and so then there was House of M, where the Scarlet Witch got rid of most of the mutants, and then there was only a small chunk, so they could go back to that dynamic of the mutants being really persecuted, because I guess they felt that it was like that Superman thing, where Superman had all of those other Kryptonians, and so they killed a bunch of them, because they were like, he's the last survivor of Krypton.
This is more exciting, we need to have him as one. This ties also in this. We're doing all the stuff what happened before, and it doesn't matter anymore.
That's the thing that's hard, but like those histories are still there and people remember them. And because I don't think they realize fully that, you know, like you have old fans, you have new fans, and I think a lot of people are ready for comics to become more of a medium where the characters transition and change and stay permanently changed.
Mm-hmm.
And like I know people will be upset, like let's say like Batman actually ended, for example, and Batman was Dick Grayson forever. Like people would be upset, and I get that, but at the same time I'm like, you have all of that stuff still exists, and we're in a time period. It's not a Doctor Who situation where people have re-recorded over the recordings and you can never see them again. Like all of these comics are still in print. You can get them, you can collect them. There's thousands upon thousands of adventures that already exist that you can go through. So I'm like, I don't feel like it would be doing the characters a disservice to move them forward at this point. And make room for, you know, new characters as well, and actually give them room to breathe. Because the problem with when you say do Lady Thor or Riri Johnson or all of these other characters, unless they're legacy, like, because in DC they tend to pass them on, like you pass the mantle on to other people and it works better. But when you just put another character into the role that another character occupied, you're of course going to get backlash and stuff, and it's not because of who the new character is, it's because you're infringing upon an established character's territory. So it would be better to create a new character, but at the same time there's no room, because you know, comics are already so expensive. And so when you go to the store and you see like some person you've never seen versus this comic with all of this history and stuff that you want to get into, it's like, well, I gotta make a choice. You know?
Yeah.
Like Marvel singles are like $4.99 right now. I'm like, who can spend $5 on one tiny, like, how many pages are individual comics now? Like, I don't even know, like 25? Like, they're not long.
Is this one single issue?
Yeah, it's one single issue.
God. We in Germany get at least 2 issues for €5. At least. That.
No, it's one. Like, Marvel's ridiculous. It's more expensive than DC. Because they want you to buy their digital stuff. And I'm like, but I don't like reading comics digitally. It's not the same.
Me neither. Oh, I hate it. Blah. This is also a thing here in Germany. You can't get your hands on very old comics. You just can't. And for example, I was playing Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions on PS3, and I was so into Noir, Spider-Man Noir, and you can't get your hands on it anymore here in Germany. They print it, I know that, but not available anymore, and it's so
No, the struggle is real for certain things. I had that happen not with, well, comics there's a couple though. I've been looking for Superman versus the Terminator for a while now, but I think I'm gonna have to do like some intense eBay search to get that going.
Yeah.
That's the thing with comics. There's always the hope that something will happen. I thought I heard rumors that they were maybe gonna do like an animated noir thing. Because if they do, then they'll definitely reprint that. Because
yes! Finally, I have hope. I still have hope.
Like, hopefully that happens. Maybe it'll end up in that horrible Netherrealm, like that Gotham City Sirens / Harley Quinn / Birds of Prey movie.
Maybe. Yeah. But, like I said, on the one hand, we're kind of lucky. I can still get my hands on the Ultimate Spider-Man comic, for example, completely. We're far behind. Like I said, we're in this very weird mishmash of new comics, old comics, and old comics that came way, or at least as far as I know, I'm not the expert, came way later in America than they came to us. So we're not that, they are not so far in the past, for example. And
how do you feel about Ultimate Spider-Man? Or the Ultimate Universe in general?
I didn't read anything until now, but I am quite curious, and I personally like it has a beginning and an end.
Yeah.
It's finally nothing ugly. I don't know. They're married and they're not, and then they get pregnant and not an so
I know, and now they have that Elseworlds comic where, well, it's not really Elseworlds, but there is that now, that Spider-Man comic, Renew Your Vows, where he is with Mary Jane and they do have a daughter, but that's not like the main Spidey, and I'm just like, why is this happening? Why?
This is so weird.
I know why, because like Spider-Man's their most popular one, so they'll do multiples.
Please, everyone. Please.
Like, they'll do multiple titles. And I'm like, but that's silly. I understand the reasoning, but again, you can't expect people to buy all of your multiples, especially not in this day and age. Like, that's just madness. It's like back in the early 90s when they used to do all the holographic covers, and they would re-release the same comic over and over again with a different holographic. They're like, look, the cover flips, and you need to buy it for $2 more. It's like, no.
Yay!
I'm not doing it. You can't make me.
And this is also a big problem for newcomers, at least for me, because they want new readers, but they're starting over, or
like rebooting and like
rebooting. Thank you, that was the word. Or like you said, example with the other timeline where he has a family and so on and so forth. But me as a newcomer, I have no idea which is out right now and which comic belongs to who and blah.
Yeah.
So confusing, and
no, that's the thing, because that was like, I remember when they launched the Ultimates verse, they were like, we're gonna create a universe that's easy for new readers to jump on. No baggage, no nothing, just get in and we're gonna restart everything. And I'm like, okay, this sounds like a good idea, but in a few years, this is gonna be just like your other universe, and they're gonna need all of this backstory. So, that's why it would be so great if they stuck with one continuous narrative, and because then you also get people who get stuck on one thing that they like, which I totally get, because I'm one of those people too. There are certain things that aren't canon anymore, and I'm like, well, it's still canon to me, so they can deal with it. And like, you just don't let it go, and I'm like, so then you have all these multiple different canons fighting each other, and that's how you end up with all those hilarious weird meta fights, like when you're going to see like a Marvel movie, like this happened in this timeline but it didn't happen in this timeline, and I'm like, oh.
Or you're someone like me who is now like I said before, in that identity crisis when it comes to Peter Parker, and I'm just
like, who is he?
Who is he? Yeah, I really must say I get very easily emotional when it comes to fictional characters, or in general. I have a lot of feelings, and I thought, especially the first Amazing Spider-Man, I say it loud and proud, I love the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. I've watched the Tobey Maguire movies. It's a very long time since I watched that, and I watched the first one with Willem Dafoe only recently in preparation for this. And I don't know, maybe I've grown. It's
like, there are things in the first Spider-Man adaptation they did with Tobey Maguire that I really like. But I prefer the Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. I like that characterization better. But that universe doesn't do as good a job of convincing me why he's lame and an outsider. I'm like, but he seems really cool, guys. Like, I don't see why there's any problem here. But then I really like how the other universe had this more, even though it did dark things, it had a more bit of an optimistic slant to it, which I kind of liked. I was like, if we could have married how they did the villains of the first series with the Spider-Man of the second, I would have been cool. And I really like seeing Gwen, because I think Gwen's a great character. So it was really nice to actually see Gwen acknowledged as a person who existed. But at the same time, that's why Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was doomed, because no one wants to see Gwen die. I mean, it's inevitable. She's going to, but you don't want to see it happen. So I'm like, and also that one, I remember looking at that because Parksborn really blew up for a while because of that, him and Harry.
Yeah.
I was just like,
Yeah.
That they rushed that so much. It was like, remember we were friends off screen? Yeah, best friends. And I was like,
wait, hold on.
It's like it would have been nice to see some of that. And I don't know. Like I like things about both of them. And then Homecoming happened. And I like things about Homecoming too, but there's also things about Homecoming that I don't like, but that's okay. It's not the greatest movie of all time. Like, people were like, this is the best Spider-Man movie of all time.
Yeah!
And I'm like, it's a good Spider-Man to fit into that universe. It fits in with that universe beautifully. And he blends. He blends. Like, Tom Holland blends great with the MCU that they've created. And I like him as Spider-Man. And, like, they do a better job of convincing me that he wouldn't fit in quite as well. And he's kind of awkward. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, that works. But as a Spider-Man thing, I don't feel that he stands alone. And one of the things about Spider-Man is that I've always felt that he has that outsider vibe because of how his comic is written, where every other hero gets praised and what a wonderful hero, and then it's Spider-Man, he's a menace to society, and he's just the worst, and he's a criminal. Is he working with the Rhino? We don't know. And so I feel like that element was missing, and also because I'm probably never gonna recast J. Jonah Jameson because J.K. Simmons did such a fantastic job in those first films. I'm like, can we just hire him again? I'd watch it.
I don't care. Oh,
he's so perfect. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, like, Spider-Man, I don't think he could work at a news office anymore in this modern climate. I guess he could just be a freelancer who sends his images over the internet, but... That's the thing, too, is that do you remember there was that bit of an outcry against Spideypool when Tom Holland was cast?
Yeah.
Because people were like, it's pedophilia, Tom Holland's 15 years old, and I'm like, look... You don't need to be using the Tom Holland version.
Yeah! And I love that now in AO3, Andrew Garfield is my Spidey.
Yeah.
Just, on the one hand, I kind of like it. On the other hand, is that really necessary? Just make him 22 years old and that's fine.
That's the thing, too. I'm like, you can age him up. Like... Yeah. I'm like, the people who are pairing him with Tony aren't aging him up, so that's a thing.
Oh. Double standards everywhere.
I like the Super Family a lot, like Tony, Steve, and their son, Spider-Man. So I'm like, yes, it's happening. I do like the fix where it's like he's dating Wade, and he has to tell them that he's dating Deadpool, and they're like, what are you doing with your life? So...
This is awesome. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Superman family because I love Uncle Ben. I really realized that in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. Oh, Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben. Oh, and Sally Field as Aunt May. I love that. Oh, God.
I know. That was the other thing with Homecoming. Whereas, like, I like Marissa Tomei a lot, but I'm like, sexy Aunt May. Hi.
I didn't quite have the problem with that, but she had nothing to do. She had
nothing to do. Yeah. She was just there, and I'm like, so we took the time to cast Marissa Tomei and de-age her, and then we didn't give her anything to do. We just sat her there.
This is my main problem I have with, Spider-Man Homecoming is a hate-love relationship with me. Especially, like I said, I'm Amazing Spider-Man late to the party. I watched it only December 2016, all the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I was like, I'm so into it. And
then it's already Homecoming time.
And I was like, yeah, he's good, but...
I think my favorite thing about Spider-Man Homecoming is the people who made those memes of the fake sequels that were like Spider-Man Prom, Spider-Man Winter Formal. And I was like, I wish I would watch those. Yeah. It's like my thing was that I didn't like that he didn't really learn how to do anything himself. On the one hand, I thought it was cute. And I was like, okay, I love the idea of, like, Daddy Tony looking out for him, even though he's not really at the beginning of the movie, because he's neglecty, but that's Tony. And so... but then, like, the fact that his suit talked to him, and he had all of that extra tech, and I was like, at this point, if they just want to make him Iron Spider, I'd be fine with it, because, like, that seems to be the route they want to go. then just do it. But then they were like, no, let's have him propose to Pepper, even though like he hasn't even talked to her for like 3 movies. It's fine.
Yeah, one of my friends actually we talked about Homecoming and he didn't saw it and was like, are they even together anymore? So Tony and Pepper, and I was like, kinda. I don't know.
I guess, you know.
I guess, yeah. I guess.
It's just it's one of those hilarious plot holes in the MCU, because that always happens when you're trying to string so many movies together. Like the biggest plot hole of all, when he destroys all his suits at the end of Iron Man 3, and then he's like, I guess I rebuilt them in the interim because, you know?
Because.
I also got rid of my arc reactor, cause. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
Bring back Tony's arc reactor. But seriously, how much more intense would that scene in Civil War have been when Captain America is going to bring the shield down and kill his alleged friend, even though they never showed they were friends in those movies, if he'd still had an arc reactor? Like, that would have been devastating.
That would be intense.
No, that's the one trailer that I laughed out loud at for Civil War. Is like, he's my friend, so was I. And I was just...
Since when?
That was me since when?
Yeah, true. Yeah, I realized myself, the Marvel formula, Marvel Cinematic Universe formula, just works not with me. It's just, I like the movies. They're very good popcorn, blockbuster, funny Marvel movies. But they don't work with me. Just.
What is it about the formula that doesn't work for you?
I want more character-driven character development, character interaction. I love these characters. I like Tony. I love the relationship between him and Peter Parker, for example. But I don't get enough. I just. And then there's this plot holes and character development where I was, why is this happening? And okay, yeah, you said he's his friend, but we didn't see it, and yeah.
I know, where they rely on your comic knowledge at times. Like, I felt like they very much did that with Steve and Tony. Because Steve and Tony in the comics were best friends, and I was like, I knew this going into it. I'm like, okay, I know this, but you need to show me something, because the movies only gave me reasons why him and Steve would dislike each other. So I was still into Stoney. Like, just reading how people were fixing it in fandom was really fascinating. And, like, all this, you know, like, we're gonna fix this. But, like, they only gave... Because... They also established, they did this horrible thing, where they established that Howard Stark was still the abusive, awful dad that he is in the comics. And then in Captain America, they were like, Howard Stark is this wonderful guy who is Steve's friend. And I'm just like, well, now they're gonna hate each other, aren't they? And then they established that Howard spent, like, Tony's childhood looking for Captain America. And I'm like, well, no wonder he hates him. All you're giving me is reasons why they hate each other. Now I have to ship him and Doctor Strange. Thanks a lot.
And then there's also this, I must say, I seriously critical analyze Spider-Man Homecoming. And then if I don't have enough character development, and then I have also these plot holes in the character development. For example, my main issue with Spider-Man Homecoming. There you go. I liked this movie when I watched it. I really liked it when I watched it. But afterwards, I was like, this happens right after Civil War, where Tony was full on, we're signing the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah, we're doing it.
And he brings a 15-year-old boy, he doesn't know that much, and gives him a super duper suit, and which has an instant kill mode. Okay, yeah, it's behind a firewall, but Ned gets behind it in a few minutes. And there's also this where it's I've lost. I'm lost. And did Peter also sign the Sokovia Act, or did he not? And then Tony was so into it, but in the Sokovia stuff.
Yeah.
Then he just let Peter Parker with this super suit, with this instant kill mode, just run free, and 2 months later, and he gives him his number, sure, but no one reacts on that. I mean,
I know he's just calling.
Yeah.
And there's like, no, we don't have time to talk to you, teenage boy who's out being YouTubed all over the place and everybody's seeing you and all of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of get that this is Tony. He just doesn't care that much, I guess.
And well, that's the thing that I have a huge issue with is Tony has one of the most significant arcs in the MCU as he goes from arrogant jerk to traumatized, like, post-traumatic stress disorder having, guilt-ridden, trying to do the right thing hero. But a lot of the writers like to just fall back on, like, oh, he's just so snarky, snark. And I'm like, you know, there's so much more to him than that. And I feel like they fell into a lot of that in Homecoming. I mean, they did acknowledge that he does care about stuff. But I almost feel like at the end of Civil War, they did the reverse of what they did in the comics. Which was in the comics, they just decided that Tony was right. And, like, the pro-registration side was right, and everybody else can sit down. And, like, that was it. And... Yeah. And then it was just awkward, and then Captain America died. And even though he didn't die because of that, but it felt like it. And then, in the movies, even though I felt they did a better job of presenting the nuance of both sides, even though... Because for that, where you stand really depends on how you feel politically and stuff like that. But for me, I was just like, okay, Steve, I mean, we're getting really intense about one person. But anyway, I felt like... They did almost the opposite of the comic, where they were like, well, Steve's right, and Tony can sit down. Yeah, I was just like...
Absolutely.
I was like, look, it's a lot more complicated than that. You can't just give him a flip phone and be like, you know, call me if you need me on this ancient phone that I got from Walmart. And it's like, no! That's not... And because they left it kind of like... I thought where they left it, they were kind of reworking... the Accords, because the thing that I think Civil War does the worst is that instead of presenting an argument for how the Accords are flawed, they present it more in how it's an inconvenience for Steve and Steve's life and, like, Steve's stuff. And I'm like, okay,
Steve and Bucky!
Exactly. And it's like, but there was actually an argument to be made about how this could really hinder, like, being able to help people and stuff, just as there's an argument to be made for why Tony wants them. And I'm like, okay, this is actually a discussion that would be interesting to have. But then instead of having it, it's just like, but Bucky, though. Tony's standing between Steve and Bucky. And I'm like, I like Bucky a lot.
Me too.
But I'm also one of those people who, like, when I read fics, where Bucky's all like, Steve doesn't see me, and he doesn't see who I really am now. I'm kind of like, no, I don't think he does. Like, I'm one of those people. I'm like, I really get Stucky, and I totally understand why it overtook Stoney in the current climate. But at the same time, I hope we get some more actual development scenes between those two, instead of just like, we're friends till the end. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but there's a lot of stuff that's happened. Can we talk about it? The best fix I think I read were where they used Tony's post-traumatic stress development, like, mind thing that he developed at the beginning of Civil War to, like, be able to work through your memories and deal with them on Bucky. And I'm like, we could have done that, and then they could have been friends again. But no, let's just send him to Wakanda. I know, right? You see, that's the thing. You fall down the Marvel movie plot hole. And the thing with... I wish that all of them were owned by the same person, because it would be really cool to see Deadpool in that universe with everybody else. But at the same time, there are certain characters who are harder to work into a narrative like that. And Deadpool is one of them, just because of his very nature of just being so, like, fourth wall breaky and zany and all that stuff. I'm trying to imagine Deadpool in Civil War.
Oh, God.
It would be great.
I'm so with the whole Disney taking over Fox. I'm so not into it. I'm happy that they're all coming together and so on and so forth, but I don't see Deadpool under Disney wing. I just don't see it. Yeah, they keep him rated R, but it's Disney rated R, and I don't know. I want to give them a chance. Obviously, I will watch them, but I'm very critical, and I'm just. Can we just leave it like that? And I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, because I think a lot of people at this point, if we acquire any more stuff, Fantastic Four, X-Men, they'd want to see them right now. And I'm like, no, but this universe has spent so long building up, you couldn't just jam other things into it, especially because we had to write around certain things to make them make sense, because we didn't have mutants, or we didn't have the Fantastic Four. And so we had to write around certain plot elements. So we can't just bring them in now. I mean, one of the key players in the Infinity Stone saga in the comics is the Silver Surfer, and I'm like, we don't even have that, so let's just leave that alone. Like, Silver Surfer's not here for this, so let's forget it.
Yeah. And I think for me, it didn't work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It didn't work for me that they brought Spider-Man in it. It kind of did, but it kind of don't for me. I think my theory is it wasn't planned that Spider-Man is in the MCU. For me, they're just got the deal with Sony and thought, now what we're gonna do now? Yeah,
I know they wanted him because like Peter is such a big part of the arc in the Civil War comic, and I know they do try and put nods in there whenever they can, and like his affiliation with Tony before Tony kind of throws him under the bus and all of that stuff. But my issue with it is that I hate that he's 15. I like that he's in high school and he feels like he's in high school. I'm like, that's cool, and that's cool to see. And if we're gonna reset, I don't mind resetting all the way back to that, and we can have him do all of his stuff again. Okay, fine.
Yeah, okay.
But then Tony enlisted child labor to go to this like life or death fight in an airport. Yeah. That was like, hey, this kid that I saw on the internet want to come and be part of this giant, massive fight with real stakes and all of this stuff.
Yeah. And I personally, this is also the thing, character development thing, I don't get their motivation. What was Tony's motivation to do that?
He knew he didn't have enough people?
Yeah, we don't have enough people, yeah. And people like Spider-Man, I guess. And he's in the super suit, and he doesn't know this person, and this is Ultron, can be Ultron all over again. And
I know, I'm like, did you learn nothing? Did you learn nothing?
And Peter, especially, with great power, this is my main issue. With great power comes great responsibility. The whole shtick with Uncle Ben already happened. He knows that. He should know that already. And he's in Berlin, talking to his phone. Yeah, we're fighting against Captain America. He's evil, I guess. Not very responsible. You're a fan of Tony Stark since your childhood, I guess.
Because they made that fan theory canon that Peter was the kid that he saved in Iron Man 2, and I'm like, I didn't need that. Like, you could admire Iron Man without him saving you. Like, there are lots of reasons to like Tony in the MCU without him having to directly save you.
Yeah.
There are. Also, I want to know, when did Captain America shoot those stupid gym videos that they were watching in Homecoming? When did he have time for that? He was sitting in like the SHIELD helicarrier, and they were like, hey, do you want to record some stuff?
Yeah, great. Oh, comes great responsibility. And
until a rich guy shows up in your living room and gives you a free super suit.
Amazing suit, okay. Everything. Yeah, like I said, I critically analyzed it, and everything he does in this movie, Peter especially, where's the responsibility? And he's just, I'm going after Vulture, sorry, and he always gets his butt kicked. And the only difference at the ending is he saves Tony's butt with getting after Vulture at the end. And the only difference is that he gets him at the end. Yeah, they're collateral damage all over the place, and he's stealing a car and whatnot. The only difference is, at the end, he gets the bad guy.
Yeah.
What is the difference here between all the other...
I know, because he still went after him the same way. It's not like he took any of the lessons that Tony was low-key attempting to teach him and applied them, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Despite how Tony plays it at the end. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't come help you because we didn't have budget for that, but I'm so glad that you're alive, and that's... One of my problems is MJ. I don't like how they did non-MJ, because they made a big thing where they're like, oh, she's not really MJ, but she is MJ, and I'm just like, why did we do this? And it just, there's been this rejection of MJ as a character for years now, and it didn't start here.
Yeah.
There's been this backlash against the fact that she wants to be an actress, that she's a model, that she's a bit superficial, and all of those things. And because one of those things was like, because that was the debate when they first appeared, her and Gwen at the same time, was like, Gwen was nerdy and sciencey, and then she was like, you know, this kind of superficial model type, and it was like, oh, which one's he gonna pick? They're so different. And I'm like, I don't mind that difference, and I kind of feel like it made her different, and I kind of liked that, and it makes her very different from him, which I find interesting.
Absolutely.
And a way for them to find common ground, even though they have these very different goals. So what is it that brings them together? And that's one of the things I find interesting. So I'm like, I already wasn't down for the changes they made, kind of like how I'm not fully down for the reasoning behind why they made Jane Foster a scientist versus a nurse. It's like this idea that it's an upgrade. But then they do this quote-unquote upgrade on MJ by making her a sassy, smart-talking teen, and I'm just like... But she's just mean to him the entire time. And I'm like, so now she's mean to... Like, why am I supposed to like that? Like, that's not cute. She was mean to him the whole time, and she's like, oh, but she likes him. I'm like, I don't care. She was mean to him.
Yeah.
Spider-Man has enough problems in his life without people being mean to him.
I get they wanted, I don't know, this edgy teenage stuff, but...
Like, I get they wanted to make her, like, more relatable for this generation, but that's also a thing with me. Like, I tweet about it all the time, like, when people use colloquial slang or try really... It reminds me of, like, remember in the 80s when they would have the cool kid, and he would have sunglasses and a leather jacket and pull up on a motorcycle, and he was so cool, and I'm like... Okay, but that didn't look cool, like, 2 years from now. Like, it's gonna be... When you try and make something really for the time directly, it never ages well. And I'm like, I'm gonna be watching this movie in 3 years, and this is gonna be really awkward.
Yeah.
It's not even gonna take that long. It never takes that long with stuff like that. Never. It's like when you see a character writing with a gel pen and wearing, you know? Gel pens.
And probably another one of my problems was Gwen with Amazing Spider-Man. Like I watched it a few years ago, and I was like, too soon.
It's too soon. I'm not ready.
Exactly, I'm not ready. I'm still moaning. I can't take that. And I also find that very funny. And when they killed Gwen off in the comics. They killed her off because she was boring, or they said she was boring, and nobody was interested in her. And now this huge fight between who's better, who prefer MJ.
Yeah.
And some said even Gwen in the Amazing Spider-Man movies was more MJ-like, and I was like, I don't know, I just like Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield. Okay, deal with it.
She was kind of, like, fusion-y, but I didn't mind. I was like, we so rarely see Gwen. Like, seeing her in that brief bit in Spider-Man 3 doesn't count. I don't count that as Gwen.
Oh, that was not... Spider-Man 3 was, I don't know.
I'm very intrigued by this Venom movie. I'm very interested in how that goes and how they're gonna do... I am personally completely down for villain movies without heroes in them. I'm like, that's fine. We can do that. I'll watch them. Yeah. I actually don't hate Suicide Squad, and I think the best parts of Suicide Squad are the very beginning when they're going through their histories and you see how they've interacted with Batman. And Batman's like this shadowy peripheral figure in their lives. And I'm like, that's kind of really interesting. And my favorite scene is actually when they're doing the Joker Harley chase with Batman, and he busts into them in the club and he's chasing them on the car, and I'm like, that's really interesting. And I would love to see an entire movie from this perspective. Villains trying to live their life, and Batman coming and messing
ruins it all.
and ruining everything, because Batman ruins everything. So I would be really interested in seeing a whole series of movies like that. And Spider-Man's one of the few characters in Marvel you could do that with. Because the MCU's villains, just Marvel's villains in general, there are very few that I care enough about to actually follow. I mean, Loki's one of them, so I would watch a Loki movie entirely. I would also love to see Lady Loki, though, and I don't think that's going to happen. So
It's Disney. Maybe. I don't know. I just want to pin all bad stuff on Disney, so...
I think what it is that, like, Tom Hiddleston became so popular. Because Loki hasn't been that popular of a character for a while. Like, he's popular if you like Thor. But, I mean, in general, it wasn't like, oh my god, Loki. So they changed him back, and now he's also hot, because in his male form in the comics, he was not that attractive back in the day. But I'm sad, because then we'll never see Lady Loki plotting with Doctor Doom, which was some of my favorite stuff of all time. Also, I want a good Doctor Doom. Can we have that? Can we please have a good Doctor Doom? That would be nice.
Fantastic Four in general. We just...
Here's the thing, like, I really like the Fantastic Four comics, but I have yet to see an adaptation that makes them interesting. I'm like, why are they so boring when they're adapted? They're not this boring, I swear. I feel like I have to justify myself to people, like, look, it's really interesting.
Maybe there's just... this type of characters just not adaptable in movies. Maybe it's just...
Maybe. But they say that about things, and then they find a way to adapt them. Although, like, I'm still waiting for a good Dune adaptation. They say they're making a new series, so fingers crossed. I mean, they said that about Deadpool for a while, that he wasn't adaptable. So they definitely proved that wrong.
There you go. And he was a massive success, also.
No, I can see why people don't like it, but I mean, I do, so.
I like it as well. Maybe we can all... I still have questions, so...
Yeah, go for it.
We can go all the way back, if you have time at least.
Yeah, I have 30-ish minutes, so yes.
Oh, that's enough. Absolutely, we can manage that. I'm, like I said, very analytical when it comes to character development and characterization and so on. And I would have liked to discuss something, the problems with our ships, also with Cablepool or that Spideypool, and not like a contest or something.
Yeah.
Just very curious if there are problems, or if this is what I like the most about your videos you're doing, have the good stuff and the bad stuff, and the why you not ship it. So yeah, this would be a very interesting.
Oh, just in terms of, like, what about the ships is more difficult to work through? Like...
Yeah, no, in general, just, not with, character-wise, maybe, with the relationship between those two, what could be difficult, or, yeah.
Yeah. I think for both, they both have their things that make them a bit difficult. Cablepool's biggest difficulty is definitely its lack of notoriety. And people's lack of knowledge of cable, which makes it very difficult to get behind. Also, the Deadpool of that era is different than this one. Not as different as he has been, but he is different, and he has different characteristics, like the multiple voice box thing is still happening, and all of that stuff. He's more insecure, I find, and still more vulnerable than he still is in the modern era, but it's a different kind of vulnerability. Like, it feels almost like he's a bit more secure in himself in the modern era, and like his insecurities lie more so in the past, and they come up and they still eat at him. but not in the same way that they used to, because it's almost been like a steady evolution from when he first appeared to now in terms of how he feels about himself. Like, he's actually developed a lot as a character.
Yeah, character development.
So you're working with a very different Deadpool than the Deadpool who you would encounter when he's dealing with Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And so you end up with a different dynamic, I think, which is part of what makes Spideypool, I think, more appealing for some people, because Spideypool is inherently, I think, a bit more of a fun ship in the fact that both him and Spider-Man are very sassy with each other. Yeah. And they banter a lot more, whereas you have that more classic dynamic with Cable and Deadpool of straight man versus, you know, banterer. So it's going to be, you know, one's a stick in the mud and one's zany, and so...
Which is also very interesting.
The thing with Spider-Man that I think is, it can be a bit difficult, is that it depends how far you're going to go with how unstable Deadpool is. Because a lot of fics, I find, really like to dive into a lot of his problems, especially with mental illness and body dysmorphia and his self-esteem and all of the stuff that he's going through. And so then you have to ask the question of how equipped is Peter to deal with that? And... like, a lot of whatever characterization of Peter you're working with, you could argue that he's not in any way qualified to be dealing with any of that. And then you also have to deal with the fact that Deadpool's not stable. And I mean that in the fact that sometimes he can be dangerous depending upon what version of Deadpool you're dealing with. And he has been known to do a face heel turn and hurt the people that he cares about and stuff like that. And with Cable, that's a bit less of an issue because Cable is so ridiculously powerful. It's no... like, he can just defend himself just by thinking about it. It's not even really that much of an issue. So he's more evenly matched to deal with that side of Deadpool's personality than Spidey is, where you kind of have to worry that he might get really, really hurt if this ended up going too badly. But at the same time, you have that interesting devotion aspect that's like Deadpool has to both of them. It's different in both of them. Some people would argue that Spidey's just more obsession. I think it's just kind of cute because Deadpool likes merchandise and stuff like that. And that's always really confusing to me because I'm like, so people hate Spider-Man, but there's all this Spider-Man merch out there in the world.
Like, making another plot hole.
And like, who is making this? Is it just like an Etsy shop? Like an underground Etsy shop making all of this Spider-Man stuff? Because
Deadpool's making it himself.
He's making it himself. He's wearing it himself. He's a walking advertisement. I think what makes either ship really interesting, though, and what makes comic ships so interesting in general, is that there are so many ways that you can take the characterization because of all the different histories and all the different eras you could be coming to the characters from. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why, for example, even in side pairings like Stony, you still have such a strong Stony presence. Because some Stucky shippers I talk to, they're like, why isn't it dead yet? Like, there's nothing there for them. And I'm like... but the comics are still going. And everybody is at a different point in their journey, be it in the films, be it in the comics. You could still be at so many different points. So depending on where you are and what you're into, you're going to come at it in so many different ways. And that's why I'm interested to see how this Cable-Deadpool dynamic plays out in the movies. Because I'm interested in seeing if it's going to cause people to go back and look at what their relationship was, or just develop an entirely new ship based off of their relationship in this movie. So I'm very curious as to how they're going to develop that and how it's going to be. And at the very least, I hope it's a fun, accurate portrayal of their relationship, because I kind of love how much Cable is just putting up with Deadpool and pretending that he doesn't like it, but he doesn't really mind that much. So
we'll see.
Because that's one of my favorite things of their team-up comic, is that they spend time together outside of world-ending calamities. It's not just like, oh no, stuff's happening. It's like, no, they spar together. They hang out together. Like, they do things together. Friend things. Like, they actually enjoy spending time together. And I like the characters who actually like Deadpool. Like, Wolverine doesn't hate him. Like, but he's got issues because of Weapon X and all of that stuff and everything. Captain America kind of can't stand him sometimes, but feels bad for him. And, you know, there's all of that dynamic. And so Spider-Man, depending on when you're reading, sometimes really is annoyed with him. Like, really, genuinely annoyed. Not like, oh, it's cute. Like, no, like, go away. Kind of annoyed.
Yeah, this is one thing also thought about Spideypool. Peter can be very assholeian.
No, he can. He can be rude. He can.
Very, oh god. And I read a meta or a discussion or something like that on Tumblr where people were asking, is Peter abusive on two ways? And I don't, well, I ship them, so I will say no, but I can see why people think that is, and
I can see why people who have an issue with Peter and his characterization would think that, because there is a way to view Peter in that he's very selfish and very focused on himself and his own problems, but doesn't actually take an active role in solving them. Instead, he'll just complain about it and be like, my life is the worst life, and you all suck, and I hate you all. And it's like, do something about it. I think, I don't know, the Peter of now, how Peter currently is, might be alright in comics, because he's kind of getting his stuff more together again, and that kind of thing. I think another thing you need to deal with Deadpool, though, is Deadpool burnout, because Deadpool is everywhere. Like, when they realized he was popular, they shoved him in everything they could think of. His own independent, like, Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. Deadpool kills all these fictional characters. Team Deadpool. Like, just Deadpool everywhere. And I'm like, it's really possible to get backlash and burnout when you do that. Even if people like a character, because it's just too much, and they're just everywhere. And they're still low-key doing it. Like, they still will put him... he's their Harley. You know, they'll put him in everything. I get why people pair him and Harley. I'm like, they are almost equivalents of each other in terms of what they mean for their respective companies. And they're shoving Harley everywhere they can put her right now, too, so...
And then you're sitting here in Germany where they bring also the old stuff again, and they're just like, ugh. Like I said, I was standing in front of the shelf, and there were at least 5 Deadpool comics at once.
Yeah, like, for us, we have a pretty big section in our bookstores. So the way they divide it is, like, DC on one side, Marvel on another side, Independence on another side. So I'm standing at my Marvel wall, and Deadpool gets his own shelf. Like, he has an entire shelf to himself, and, like, other people will be like, Iron Man, here's a tiny little corner. He's got, like, 2 recent comics, and that's it, and then there's Deadpool, his whole shelf. And I'm like, oh, poor Iron Man. Spider-Man's got 2 shelves, though, so Spidey's doing pretty good. Captain America also has a pretty big chunk of that real estate. And then there are some other people, like Hawkeye. Here's your one Hawkeye book.
Oh god, poor Hawkeye. Even in the MCU, he's just like, nah. And then
he's just
Hawkeye.
There. Yeah, I know. They're like, Hawkeye, here you go. Secret family.
I mean, they forget him in the Infinity War trailer or something like that. Or is he in it or is he not? We don't know.
No, I remember there was an interview with Jeremy Renner. He's like, exciting things for Hawkeye. And I was like, are there really? Do you mean it? Because I don't know.
Yeah, maybe another thing about the problems with between the shipping or ship. You talked about this in the Spideypool video of yours, the angst. This is it ties also into this. Is Peter Parker can he handle weight?
Yeah.
And since I know that he, with all the stuff with that happened to him with Uncle Ben, Gwen, the Superior Spider-Man, and
all the other things.
Yeah, all the other things, and I'm just, he's really not capable of handling. He can't handle himself. Also, I'm not quite sure if there's a comic out there, but I think he should have at least PTSD. At least.
Like, I understand why he doesn't trust anybody. Like, everybody he knows, like, turns into a supervillain or something happens to them. Like, it's just not okay. My thing is that I feel that there's more focus on Spideypool backlash, not only because it's well known, but because there are some people who are like, oh, maybe it could become canon. And as soon as you bring up the idea of something becoming canon, you instantly have that backlash of people who don't want anything fanon to be canon, and then they start presenting to you canonical reasons why they don't think it would work. Because I think Spideypool can work perfectly well if it remains fanon. But when you do try to bring it into canon, you do have to deal with all of those other things, because then you would try, I mean, you could argue, I mean, Marvel doesn't write the greatest relationships anyway, but I mean, Deadpool definitely, I don't know if he has the energy to deal with Peter. Like, you could flip it the other way too. Like,
absolutely.
Like, Peter's always got stuff going on. Like, Deadpool has his own stuff. Like, he's still a mercenary. He has a daughter now. Like, he has stuff he needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Peter, like, you know, he's getting possessed and all kinds of things are happening to him. And I felt bad for him there, though. In the Superior Spider... It's the same with that arc that Tony had, where his suit was taken over by artificial intelligence and nobody noticed. And I'm just like, I'm not okay. It's like how nobody else noticed that he was Otto Octavius. I was like, nobody noticed that he got all super draconian and Orwellian and was sending spider bots out across the whole city, and they were like, yep, that seems like a Peter thing to do. I would never trust my friends again. I would have so much trauma, you know, that I could be an entirely different person and no one noticed. Thanks, guys. You know, except for Deadpool, so that's a point in his corner.
Yeah, he's very smart. See that?
He noticed right away.
Yeah. Maybe people should listen more to him. He has good stuff to say.
Exactly, you know? How do you feel about that? That idea of fanon becoming canon? Because I know you said that you personally don't want it to, but like, how do you feel about the concept in general? Because I'm always one for, I love the idea that creators can incorporate some fandom ideas and maybe pay attention to what fans say, but I always feel that they should be able to tell the story that they want to tell, and wherever they're taking the story is the way that they're taking it, and they're the creators, and ultimately that's how it is, and you don't always have to agree with it, but you know, and with comics it's difficult too, because there are so many different creators. Like, writers will change mid-series run all the time, and then they'll spend their time retconning the stuff the person before them wrote. So,
yeah. So in general, I'm not that huge of a fan of it. I think it's a good thing that they listen to feedback, or putting nods here and there, or a bit fan service, okay? But I'm more on the side of you when you say they should tell their own stories. Then I'm absolutely down for that. Because when they are focusing too much on the fan stuff, then it becomes fan pleasing, and you can't please anyone, or everyone, not anyone, everyone. And this is I'm not a good with conflict person, and then it comes, they're just doing that for this, and
no, once you walk down that line of starting to try to please fans, you've started down a horrible path, because no matter who you listen to, you're not going to please everybody, because fandom's not a monolith, like I like to say. So there are so many people interpreting things so many different ways. And even if, like, let's say you're like, we're going to make Spideypool canon, it's like, okay, well, which type? Because everybody shipping Spideypool doesn't even view it the same way. So even if you did that, you're not going to please everybody, and it's going to be a huge, you know, and there was a period of time where people were saying that the acknowledgement, because they were playing with Spideypool more a few years back in the comics and stuff like that, and they're like, that's queer baity and stuff. And I was like, I don't think it is with Deadpool, because Deadpool is the one character where it makes a lot of sense to acknowledge fandom culture in that way, because Deadpool is supposed to have the knowledge that he is a comic book character and that the outside world does exist. So it very much makes sense to play with that aspect with him, and he's one of those few characters where you can get away, I think, with a lot of that fourth wall breaking stuff in a more fun way than you can with some of the other characters who are just straight up pure, you know, characters who have no idea that they're in a comic. So
and also this ties perfectly into my problem with the Spider-Man Deadpool comic, especially the Joe Kelly run. I only read the Joe Kelly run because we're at least 10 issues behind of it here in Germany, so we only finished the Joe Kelly run. And this is again something you can't please anyone. I didn't like the road they took, especially Peter, in this comic. Have you read them?
I have. So what about it? What about it didn't you like?
I just this is maybe it ties also in my identity crisis with Peter Parker. I just when the first 6 issues, the first volume I brought in Germany ended with Peter waking up after he got shot and killed from Deadpool when Deadpool saved him. This was the last issue I've read, and when I start falling in love with the ship. And the second issue was like Peter was on a very weird downward spiral. I didn't quite. The first thing I noticed is, with when Wade got his pretty face, whoever, depends on who you ask, and Peter was like saying, "Yeah, you have your life together and you're happy now," and I was like, "This is kinda ableism." I think I was just.
It doesn't put like the ship, I found, in the best light, because it makes it harder to believe that he would want to be with Wade as Wade is.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things I personally like about Cablepool, is that Cable has no issue
with
absolutely. How Deadpool looks or is at all. It's not even a factor or anything for him. It legit does not matter. And and the thing is that Deadpool's appearance can matter, and I get it, because Deadpool is supposed to be really, really, like, uncomfortable looking. And I'm like, that's not something everybody's going to be able to get over, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I get what you mean, but it's like, oh, you're so hot now, like, everything's good. Like, I'm like,
you can. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm like, Wade already had problems before
he has so many issues with that, and especially, and the more I read it, the more thought I was like, Peter, who are you? What the freaking? What are you doing? And I was like, why is Wade putting up with that?
Well, that's the thing. For me, it had that dynamic, which is the hardest Spideypool dynamic for me, which is love-struck Wade and mean Peter, you know? And it's like, you know, there's Wade, like, I love him so much, and I'll do all the things, and I admire Spider-Man, and I want him to like me, and I'm gonna be the best hero and everything that I can be to impress him, you know? I'm gonna impress Spidey with all the stuff that I can do. And then there's Peter, who's just like, meh. You know?
Yeah, it's not even meh,
he's rude. He's straight up rude, and mean at points, and, like, when Deadpool is trying to help him or save him a lot of times, and he's just all like, ugh, Deadpool.
And even worse, we're spoiling it all. Do we?
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay, but he said a few panels before he says we're friends and whatnot when they are on this bridge, and a few issues later, they have this intense fight with the sword with Nightcrawler, and I'm just like, what the? You beheading your best friend or
friends?
this is what friends do, apparently. And Wade is totally fine with that, it seems. And I'm just...
Because for me, that played into the problematic elements of the idea that Wade already has, like, lots of issues with himself and doesn't think that he's worth a lot.
Yeah.
And, like, you still see that come up in modern issues. Like, when he sees his daughter for the first time, he's like, she can't be my daughter, she's too beautiful. You know? And, like, he has all of these issues with himself, and so he doesn't feel that he deserves to be treated well. And so... when you see something that plays into that exact idea of like, oh, I don't deserve to be treated well and this is fine because nobody should treat me any better because I don't deserve it, then it's just like, no.
And I was always thinking, Wade Wilson deserves better. Again, every time I read this part, and also because I was thinking, who the F is this? This is not Peter Parker. What is he doing? He's beheading and doing... using Ellie as bait and whatnot, and I was like, what the? And then it wasn't mine. It was so not mine. I will always have these first issues. They will always have a special place in my heart because they opened me up to Spideypool. But after that,
You see, it's interesting because there's a flip side argument that people have against Cablepool, which is that Cable often tries to shelter Wade in a way. Like, when he takes him in to live in the city that he built, his magical cloud city of wonder that is going to be the new utopia for all the people, he partially puts him there so that he can keep an eye on him. It's not entirely benevolent. It's partially like, you're here and I can see what you're doing and I'm going to make sure you don't do anything too stupid or too crazy, and like, I'm gonna kind of police you a little bit without actually doing anything to do it, just that you're gonna be here. And it doesn't work. I mean, because there's a murder in the city and Wade did it, and he doesn't realize he did it because he forgot. And so he decides to be the detective who's investigating it, but he's investigating his own crime without realizing it.
Oh my god.
But there are people who, because at that point, like Deadpool's still blacking out and stuff like that. So there are people who are saying that he's not in a place where he could be in a relationship with anybody because he doesn't even remember what he's doing half the time. And then people are like, well, you know, Cable's kind of controlling, I guess, in that way. I'm like, well, he is and he isn't. Like, he's keeping an eye, but you could argue that Deadpool needs that at that point because he's still going off killing people without
and forgets about it.
And, like, Cable knows that he did it and kind of lets him investigate it anyway because he doesn't want to, like, be part of the trauma of just telling him, like, hey, you killed this person, you know?
It's kind of sweet.
But at the same time, then you have the flip side where it's, like, Peter who's not doing anything and Cable's just running around doing all the things. Like, I mean, Deadpool is. So I'm just like, it really depends how you look at it. Like, there's, like, you can look at it in a positive or a negative way on either side of them. And again, you're working with different Deadpools. Like, the Deadpool who Spider-Man encounters years later when they have their team-up thing is not the same blacking out, I don't remember what I'm doing, you know, kind of Deadpool that Cable is dealing with. And because at that point, after their team-up, him and Cable stop having significant interactions, and they really don't again until Split Second. It's one of those things that most writers seem to even forget, you know, because nobody's working with Cable for a long time because there's no reason to outside of X-Men, which makes sense because he's a very specific character. He doesn't have Deadpool's merc with a mouth ability to just hop around anywhere, or even Spider-Man's ability to, you know, be implemented in multiple stories, because Cable's very much tied into his place of origin. Ran out of time.
And out of time,
Although I do love the in the newer Deadpool where they had their Deadpool hopping through time series. I was like, yes.
One question that I would have is, this is the only thing I not quite get about Wade.
What?
Has he amnesia or does he not? But it mostly depends on who's writing him. Yeah. But I have no idea.
Well, it's fascinating because there was a period in time where it was implied that he isn't even Wade Wilson. So, like, like, that was an interesting period. I mean, now I think we've just accepted that he is, but there was a period of time where it was like, is he Wade Wilson? Is he not Wade Wilson? Does he remember? Like, they started playing with that again recently for a bit, where it was like he had memory gaps again, but it turned out it was because he was being kidnapped and his limbs were being chopped off and all kinds of stuff.
Oh god. And this part would I forget also.
So, it really varies. It's one of those things that I find writers use as a plot convenience, depending upon what they want him to know or not know. Okay. It's like, if you want to have a plot where Wade doesn't know what's going on, you can implement the whole, like, oh, his mind's all muddled and he doesn't remember everything. But if you want a more competent Wade who knows what he's doing, then you can be like, well, he's doing okay now. And the way they've kind of explained it canonically is that it depends on how his healing factor is working, because he's more or less okay on certain days. Just like how his skin looks better or worse on certain days because he's in a constant battle with his cancer and everything. So it's like, it just kind of depends on how he's doing on that day, which makes it incredibly convenient to write what you want.
I've also read he can't remember his past, or can he?
Kinda. Like, again, it depends.
Very convenient for writing.
Yeah, it's like kinda. That was the whole, like, is he Wade thing. Like, kinda, sorta. Maybe he's Wade. There was also that thing that Wade was somebody he killed, and then he assumed his identity after he killed him, so...
Wow.
That was a thing, and that he doesn't remember who he is, actually, so...
That is also a good thing, I guess, to have a very...
Well, the thing is that at least he varies canonically. Like, there's a reason for his variance, versus Spidey, where it's just like, oh, I'm different because they retconned me. You know, and like, even if they retcon Deadpool, you can at least explain his retcon canonically, which makes it easier to swallow than, you know, like, oh, he made a deal with Satan, and now...
Yeah. This was also a part in Spider-Man Deadpool I didn't get. Mephisto. I didn't know who he was, and I first thought Spidey was possessed by a demon, so that's why he beheads Wade and Wade, and when Wade kills Itsy Bitsy, it's everything fine, I guess. That was my first guess. Then I knew Mephisto from other comic book appearances, and I was like, yeah, okay.
Like, the devil's just a character in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. And he's such a plot device. I just happened to be here. And I'm gone.
Like, today I felt like interfering with things because...
Yeah.
Deus Ex Mephisto.
One thing I've realized when reading comics, is it just me, or are only the Deadpool writers Spideypool shippers? Well, I think every time Spidey appears in with Deadpool together, it's in a Deadpool comic. Is that true, or is it just me?
Like, I think they have a couple of other appearances cross, but I think in order to be a Deadpool writer, you have to be tapped into that kind of pop culture element. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to write them as well, I don't think. Because the pop culture and fandom stuff, like, it helps you to get into the mindset of Deadpool in terms of how Deadpool views the world. But I find that if you don't like Deadpool, you'll avoid putting him in stuff, which is what you'll find, I find, with certain writers, where it's like, we don't even need to acknowledge that he's a thing. Like, he's not real. There's no Deadpool. Get out of here.
So are the Deadpool writers Spideypool shippers?
I think for a period in time, they were at least aware of it and enjoyed playing with it. Because I remember reading an interview, and I'll have to find it again at some point, if I ever do a Spideypool update, where they acknowledged that they were acknowledging Spideypool shippers, and that some of the stuff they were directly putting in there for the fans, because they knew that Spideypool was an active part of the community, and they wanted to pay homage to that and acknowledge that they knew it was happening. So I don't know if they're shippers themselves, or at least just tuned in to fan culture, and this is where the baiting aspect comes in, I guess, for some people, in that they wanted to use it to sell comics. And I'm like, but at least it was in their own team-up comic. So they had their own arc and stuff, so it's not quite as bad as like we just brought Spider-Man into this issue so that, buy it, please.
Well, it worked with me with
like,
Spider-Man
please
Deadpool.
buy it.
So, well, kind of worked.
No, I know. I'm saving all my money right now because I need to buy Astro City, and they don't even sell it in stores anymore. They only sell it online, so I need to buy it online, which is sad. Like, I went into my store, and I was like, where is it? They used to have a section, and I'm like, now it's gone.
Yeah, I probably will buy next the Cablepool collection when they are re-releasing the first.
Yeah, when they re-released
the first one. Yeah, I can read every other issue. No, just don't the first one.
No, I'm in this interesting thing with the X-Men Apocalypse arc as well, where I can tell they're getting ready to do a shift. I'm like, either they're re-releasing the big one again, or they're re-releasing them as small ones. So I'm gonna wait and see which it is, and then I will buy it. I'm not making the same mistake twice. I'm not doing it again. Because Marvel does that. DC's kind of started to do it, but they don't do it as much. They've never done it as much as Marvel does. DC just releases things and they let it sit there. They're like, okay, now it's a compendium. Now you buy it. So...
Take it or leave it.
What they've started doing that I really like, though, is they've started releasing all of the ages. The Silver Age, the Bronze Age, in giant collections. And I'm like, yes, I can get the eras that I want.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I have the last question. I'm not the hugest Harry Potter fan, but I love sorting characters into houses. We know Wade is a Hufflepuff. Spidey and Cable. Which houses?
Oh my gosh. I actually think Cable would be a Slytherin. I don't think Cable would be a Gryffindor. He does too much underhanded stuff to be a Gryffindor. And he likes to play the long game, and he can be a bit difficult to read. So I think I would put him in Slytherin for sure. I might actually put Spidey in Hufflepuff along with Wade. Like, he wants to do the right thing in like a Gryffindor kind of way, but he's so all over the place. He's all over the place. Yeah. And he can't figure his stuff out. And he does not plan ahead, so he's definitely not a Ravenclaw. Like, he's smart and he can invent stuff, but he doesn't play any kind of like, I'm playing chess and they're playing checkers. Like, that is not Peter Parker.
Yeah, I had this thought as well, which house he could be. And my first guess was Ravenclaw, but he has also this very impulsive side on him, where I thought, maybe Gryffindor.
Gryffindors are impulsive, so it's like, yeah, he has that. So I would either put him in Hufflepuff with Wade or Gryffindor, like Gryffindor. But Cable Slytherin all the way. Like, Cable like doesn't even acknowledge that Cyclops is his dad and is so mean to him half the time. It's really funny. Also, just reading all of those scenes where he's all like, father, and I'm like, don't do that. It's like Once Upon a Time, where it's like with the scenes with Pan and Rumple. I'm like, please stop. Like, I know he's your dad, but you were at this point older than him. It is really weird to read this.
Totally different kind of daddy issues.
Yeah, where they're like, Cyclops, go talk to your son, and I'm like, please stop doing this.
Oh god. Again, back to Hufflepuff. So Hufflepuffs don't get their shit together? Is that what you're saying?
I think they do, but I think it's just that they're not as worried about it. Like, that's the way I read Hufflepuff. Like, they were more okay to go with the flow and go along and enjoy things, and they weren't quite as intense as the other houses were about stuff, because all the other houses, like Ravenclaw is like, I gotta be so smart learning all the things, and Slytherin, ambition and the cutting and the achieving of all of our goals, and and Gryffindor is like, we're brave and striving for all of the things to be the best, and the school has a bias inherent in our favor, so we need to... That's the one thing, though. Like, Spidey would be a terrible Gryffindor because everybody hates him. So... he's the outlaw Gryffindor. Poor Spidey. I feel so bad. Like, everybody hates mutants and Spidey.
Yeah. This is one thing. I'm not quite getting why they hate him so much.
Bad press. He's got bad press.
And he's mostly he's doing the yes.
I know, he takes pictures of himself for these articles that are just like, Spider-Man's the worst.
Oh, but he's an idiot, and it's not like he can sell his photos to someone else.
No, people's got a monopoly, from what I can tell, of papers and theory.
Pictures of Spider-Man.
There's no other paper you can read. It's the Bugle or nothing.
Oh my god.
It's the only newspaper for all of New York, I guess. Even though there are other heroes who operate in New York who do not have bad press.
Yeah!
Like, the Daredevil doesn't have all these articles like he's a menace.
Maybe he's, Matt is, because he's a lawyer, he's all...
he's suing. Yeah. He's suing the papers for slander. That's where he makes all his money to keep his practice open, winning all these lawsuits against the Bugle.
Oh my awesome. So, at least we have all my questions answered.
That's good. I'm glad we made it through all of them.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't so sure about that, but okay, that's awesome. We answered all a lot of them when we talked about something else.
Yeah, we were just chatting.
Yeah, and I love that. This is the best part of your conversations when you're chatting and just we're all over the place. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's my favorite thing. You bring in all the other side stuff. But actually, I think it's a good thing we finished everything because I do actually have to get going. So I think it's perfect. We finished all the things. We did it.
Yay!
Well, I want to thank you for chatting with me. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we got to do this Fanversation finally. So yay!
I'm also very glad. It was so much fun. Thank you very much as well.
No, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you made it to the end, as always, you are troopers. Let us know that you made it by, of course, answering the end of video question, and that is, who do you ship Deadpool with, if anyone? And since it's post-Deadpool 2, we can ask now, how do you feel about Josh Brolin as Cable? As always, thank you so much for watching, or in this case, probably listening. I know this was a long one, but I think a good one. Let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe if you're not already, get belled so you never miss a vid, and of course, I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much for spending some time chatting about fandom. Bye-bye now. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side. And as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.